This is a special presentation of Farm Journal Television.
You're watching Corn College TV. I'm Clinton Griffiths. Class is in session. Today on Corn College TV, we're running hard to find the right tillage tools for our operation and blowing out density layers, going shank to shank for full width shatter underground. Later, finding the right tools, measuring tillage depth and equipment for corn on corn. Plus, how tillage systems can impact disease later in the growing season. That's today on Corn College TV. Hello, and thanks for watching Corn College TV. You know, we talk a lot about the early stages of growing corn because, frankly, getting that good initial stand is what leads us to higher yields. Today's systems approach, we're talking about our tillage tools. Ken Ferry helps us choose the right equipment and, more importantly, know how to make that equipment work for us. Ken, looks like we just got the weed off of here, and it's maybe fall, maybe you need to do a little tillage right now. How do we go about picking the right tool for the job that we want to get done out here in this field?
I think that's an important step for each grower, and you can kind of break the tools up in classes, if you want to say, you know, where you have your standard Coulter chisel of yesterday, and then you have that, what I call a hybrid chisel that can go deeper and be more aggressive in leveling. And then you have your inline ripper class, like we're talking about here right now, and then disc rippers, that type of thing. The main thing is to figure out what you want done, because these tools are designed to do more specific things. For instance, this inline ripper is really only designed to pick soil up and drop it and fracture it, so we get better infiltration of water, better freezing and thawing, that type of thing. And it's designed to leave residue on top, so you got residue covering, that type of thing. It's not a tool for mixing in residue, mixing in limestone, that type of thing. That's not what it's designed for. If you run it wrong, it looks like it may be designed for that, right. But the reality is it's just supposed to pick things up and drop it so we can maintain the residue cover but get good infiltration of water on top.
So Ken, we saw it go both ways, bad and good, and it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, this is the way it's not supposed to run. This tool's not designed to turn things black and throw this residue up. It's designed to lift and shatter, and between those shanks we couldn't lift it. So we got no shatter here in the middle, and the objective here is to get uniform infiltration of water. We've actually made it worse. Now the water will go down these channels and only freeze and thaw there. The water that would have went in here won't get in. If we didn't do any tillage, it would have soaked in more uniform than it is today. Now, just by moving that thing down another 2.5, 3 inches,
right,
changed the whole program right here.
It looks so much different.
We've had a direct lift. Everything came up, went back down. We didn't get the explosions that we're looking for out there, and we've shattered everything through here, right through. Now this field is set up to uniformly freeze and thaw, and we've done some good here. I'm not so sure we didn't even go backwards there as far as trying to make a seed bed and all those things that would be involved in the spring of the year when we come back here.
Ken, as we said, it's important to make sure your tool fits with the job that you're doing, and this tool is definitely one that is specific.
That's right. This tool is meant to mix and bury residue, incorporate limestone, whatever you want to do, but it's a situation where you're going to turn things black with it. And it kind of depends on how you're going to follow your system up. We ran it deep and we ran it shallow, and in this case, a lot of times we see it run shallow, and if a guy's running a horizontal tillage over the top of it in the spring, may not be that big a deal. But if he's running it shallow and he's going to convert to vertical tillage in the spring, trying to just buff it off with the vertical till harrow, this is going to be a problem. Problem with this tool is you can't tell by looking at it whether it's been run deep or shallow like the other tool that we just ran. It's a situation where here you gotta go below ground and take a look.
And it's pretty obvious when you dig a little bit.
That's right. In this situation here, we've shattered all the way across, so I've got full shatter in that top 4 to 6 inches of soil between shanks just by going down another 2.5, 3 inches.
Right. No ridge there at all.
Over here between the shanks, we didn't get deep enough to shatter, so we have a column of soil in here that hasn't been tilled. So this column of soil that sits right in here is going to create a problem with the corn planter. She's going to bump and bang over here. The sprayers are going to bounce and bang over here. If I take a soil finisher and shear it off, I'm okay. But if I'm in vertical tillage, this is going to be a problem. It's going to give me a rough ride, a poor stand.
Okay, so definitely know what your equipment is made to do and how it needs to run.
Right, and if you're in a vertical till format, you can't have this if you want uniformity. So if you can't pull the machine, you either got to go get more horsepower, move the shanks in, but the end result is, if you're not running horizontal tillage to get a seed bed, you're going to have to figure out how to get it deeper and take this out.
All right, well, Ken, thanks for being with us.
Up next, we continue our tillage conversation as Missy Bauer looks below the ground at removing density layers. Plus, in today's Ask the Agronomist, tips for measuring tillage depth. And later, how a tillage system can impact disease later in the season, when Corn College TV returns.
Think about the way you farm. The Enlist Weed Control System is a proud supporter of this program and forward-thinking growers everywhere.
You don't just see a field. You see the future of your operation. One we're helping you protect. Enlist is a new herbicide-tolerant trait system that will build on glyphosate, improving performance to move farming ahead.
Your corn is trying to tell you something. If it's not getting enough nitrogen, it's not giving you maximum yield. There are a lot of products that protect the nitrogen you apply, but only one protects and increases its efficiency: N-Zone. No matter the weather, your tillage practice, or your crop, N-Zone delivers more uptake to the plant for increased yield potential. Your corn is asking for N-Zone. Maybe you should too.
Hello, I'm Mike Flores, and I want to help educate you to become a more successful trader. Open an account at Flores Trading, and you will have access to PFG's free library of online tutorials which explain how to use futures and options, as well as trading methods you can employ. At Flores Trading, you always receive free live quotes 24 hours a day, and you can trade the markets right on your own computer. You can open an account online in 5 minutes with no paperwork. To get started, just call the number below.
Rust is destroying your valuable equipment and property. Rust Guy permanently stops rust the easy way. No scraping, grinding, or sandblasting. Brush, spray, or roll Rust Guy onto any rusted metal and it will not rust again. Rust Guy is not a paint, but an industrial-strength formula that permanently stops rust. It leaves a slick, rock-hard finish that can be left as is or painted. Rust Guy protects from salt, manure, fertilizer, urine, and rain. Call 888-RUST-GUY to talk to a rust expert or go to rustguy.com.
You've seen a little bit about choosing the right tillage tool, but as we said, making sure you know how to use it is really key. Missy Bauer and Margie Fisher join the conversation now with tips on removing density layers and making sure you're getting even, full-width shatter underground.
Missy, part of making the vertical tillage system a success is achieving full-width shatter. What does that mean?
When we talk about full-width shatter, we're talking about from shank to shank. What's happening in between there? Am I shattering that soil, lifting it up and getting it shattered well, or am I leaving columns that are out there?
And how can we tell if in the field we make a pass with a tool and we're being successful?
Well, it doesn't take very long at all. The best thing after we make that pass is just go in there with our shovel and just dig across the back of the tool, just a real mini trench. It doesn't need to be this big, but we want to just dig a small trench behind there, and typically what I'll do is actually just get down on my hands and knees and start pulling the soil back. Any soil I can move with my bare hands, I find that has actually been shattered. And what I find is anything I can't move now is a column and tells me whether or not I've shattered in between there.
So here, what are the problems that we're seeing?
Here the issues that we're seeing is we're shattered very good here where the shank is run. You see the soil's very loose as I dig through here. And then as I move into here, I see that I got a hard column. I come over to here, I see that I've got nice loose soil again where a shank has run. So you can see where our shanks have run. We're not getting good shatter in between here because you can see these hard columns. What we have to be careful of is how high these hard columns come up to the soil surface. In some cases, they might come all the way up to the surface of the soil, which is definitely going to be detrimental for what we do in this field next. So we got to make sure these columns are getting down. We'd like to have at least 4 to 6 inches of good shatter, but anything we can do to reduce these columns, which is mainly going to be a function of depth in the design of your tool at what spacing it's on.
What are some of the common reasons why farmers, aren't achieving full shatter, and you're seeing examples of this?
I would say the number one biggest reason is they just run out of horsepower. So a lot of times they get out there and maybe they can't pull the tool, so what's the first thing they do? They just shallow it up so they can get it pulled. So, but this is so important. In a change of just a little bit in depth, we might go 2 inches deeper and all of a sudden get the shatter that we need across here. So a lot of times it's not much, it's just a little bit in order to get that shatter effective.
Let's see an example of where we went just a couple inches deeper.
Well, Margie, let's take a look at the other side where we ran the same exact tool but down a little bit deeper. And what is the proper depth? It's the proper depth that it takes to get this kind of shatter. So that might be different in different soil types. But you can see as I pick across here, this is very loose soil. I don't have these hard columns out here like we found on that other side. So that depth, as far as a lot of farmers want to know, I want to know the depth to run. Is it 8 inches? Is it 7 inches? Is it 10 inches? Well, it's going to depend on the tool design, and it's going to depend on the soil type and the moisture and everything that we have out there. The answer is, all we do is got to dig behind, and if we can feel that we've got this uniform shatter without those columns, that's the depth we need to run.
So farmers should strap a shovel to their tool and dig to identify soil density. Thank you, Missy.
Thank you.
When we come back, how deep did it run? Tips for measuring tillage depth, plus the right tools for growing corn after corn. And managing disease in the field may start with managing residue after harvest, when Corn College TV continues.
This portion is brought to you by Stratego Yield Fungicide from Bayer, the official fungicide of the Yield Bump.
Javen Smith farms continuous corn in southwest Iowa. He says an early season tank mix of Stratego Yield Fungicide plus Lautus herbicide has proven beneficial on these acres.
We chose Lautus in the early season application because the Lautus is very compatible with Stratego Yield, and I think with the different chemistries, you definitely want to make sure when you're running your early season application of a fungicide that it is compatible, and the Lautus, as far as tank mixability, worked very well with Stratego Yield. What we were mainly after on the early season was anthracnose. Our thoughts being if we could control the anthracnose, it would help the uptake of nutrients at that vital time at the V5, maybe help towards some ear development. Anytime that you're infected or the plant is affected with the anthracnose, our thoughts are that the plant is going to have a harder time uptaking the nutrients that it needs at a vital time.
Smith says 90% of his acres get an early application around V5, and he's been pleased with the harvestability and yield results.
You see it everywhere nowadays. We call it the yield bump. It's a farmer's way of saying you made a good decision. Because when you treat your corn and beans with Stratego Yield Fungicide, you get proven disease control for a healthier field and higher yield potential. That's why Stratego Yield is the official fungicide of the yield bump. So put her there. Stratego Yield. Healthy fields, higher yields.
Hi, this is Mark Gold with Top Third Ag Marketing. I have just issued a free workbook on marketing in the top third. This book contains all the major principles from my marketing seminars. And Top Third wants you to try an option at our expense. Included in the book is a coupon good for up to $150 in premium, plus we'll pay the commission and fees. We want you to learn how options can help you become a better marketer. Call 877-TT-HEDGE or visit topthird.com for details.
It's time now for our weekly question from the audience in our segment we call Ask the Agronomist. Today, our audience wants to know about tillage, obviously. The question is, how do I measure my tillage depth to know if I'm running deep enough?
But we want to make sure that we do measure depth properly. What we see happen a lot out in the field is that farmers don't do a good job really getting understanding the depth that they're running. So what I like to do is go out with 2 tile probes. We'll take the one and we're going to actually push it right down in the hole where the shank head ran. So I'm going to push this down to the bottom where that shank, I can feel that there. I'm going to take my second probe and come in from the side here where I have not done any tillage yet, because this gives me my true level ground. Because what often happens is they go ahead and they put the rod in, they say, well, I've got it right here. They come up and they measure their depth, which is going to be a miscalculation of the actual depth itself. So the proper way to do it is to push this in to the bottom of where the shank is run. Then we're going to take a second probe and slide it in here where the ground is level. And we're going to push underneath and we're going to have it hit this other probe here. We're going to then just dig the soil out of the way. And wherever this measurement is here, we're going to go ahead and actually mark that. Then we're going to pull that up, and now we're going to take our measurement. So in this case here, we can see where this is running about 12 inches deep. Okay, so that's the actual measurement of the tool itself. If we just went in here and did it and measured to the top of what I call the fluff, which is what a lot of growers do, you can see that it's going to be much deeper. So don't get misled that on what your actual depth is. Make sure you get a proper measurement.
We would expect in a dry year to have more trouble in our corn on corn than corn on beans. There's going to be some tougher diseases like the diplodia ear rots, if they get extremely high, and stalk rots, or the Goss's wilt, if Goss's wilt gets extremely high in the field. But you may want to take it out of corn on corn and cycle that residue through so you can lower the inoculant load itself. But it's all about dollars and cents. A lot of people went to corn on corn because of poor bean yield. So it's a situation where it's not the fact that corn on corn yields less than corn on beans, is corn on corn yields more and more profitable than beans. So it depends on what you think you can raise for soybeans. And if you've been in corn for a while, rotating out to soybeans will help knock down disease pressure, will bump up your soybean yields compared to what you're used to. But if you're in a farm that just doesn't raise good soybeans, you're fighting white mold and different things like that, then those guys have a tendency to take more of a reduction in corn on corn before they would bail out. But it all comes down to dollars and cents. I think this year my worst yields are going to be in the corn on corn. I can tell you right now my best yields are going to be in corn on corn too. So it depends on hybrid selection, drainage, and rainfall, and a lot of other things that go into that program. But if you're fighting it, maybe a good time to rotate out and tame down some of the diseases that you're actually fighting with.
Well, one of the common tools we see is actually like a disc ripper tool, because it's going to help incorporate some of that residue and give us a fair amount of tillage to actually rip up those old root balls. So that's a lot of times what we're struggling with in corn and corn, is just managing all this old residue.
Is it still important to get that full width shatter with a disc ripper?
Yes, it is, and pretty much with any tillage tool, but we have an example here of where we ran a disc ripper, and it was on 15-inch centers, so we can see where we had a shank that ran here and another one that ran here, and in between here we actually have some really nice shatter in between. This is just real loose, nice soil through this profile here. So it is important to run these deep enough to get this shatter, to get this uniform soil density that we're going after.
But is there such a thing as running it too deep, making it too loose below ground?
Yeah, believe it or not, that sounds a little weird, because a lot of times you think guys are running shallow, but with a disc ripper, it's a tool that's designed to really get down there and go aggressively deep. So in some soils, what I start to get concerned about is if we go deeper than we need to. So we still got to go deep enough to get this shattered. But beyond that, if I go an extra couple inches deep, all I'm doing then is creating almost too much of a loose sponge in here.
So what does that mean for later on in the season or with additional passes in the field?
Well, think about this. We come into this loose profile. Let's say we've got 12 inches here that's all been really loosened up. We come in here the next spring and we want to try to get this leveled up the rest of the way of the plant. So we're going to come in here with a vertical tillage tool that's only going to be doing things real shallow. What we've seen is that it's hard to get our wheel tracks from that tractor out. So because this is so loose and so mellow, because we went so aggressive with our depth.
So you're worried about tillage tracks or wheel tracks from the tillage tractor. What about the planter tractor or even the planter?
Well, from the planter side of things, we really see this come to light when we've got a lot more larger planters now and central fill planters. So the last couple years, a lot of people have been seeing in their fields where we have these pinch rows showing up. So that pinch row effect from all this weight being on the planter, when we've come in here and loosened this profile up so much that we've got too soft of a basically a soil to plant into, and we see a big effect from these pinch rows.
So you're talking about on a central fill planter, taking away from individual hoppers, centering all that weight in the middle. How do you know if you have pinch rows?
Well, a lot of times we're going to actually be able to see that out in the field, the effect on the growth. It's going to be smaller as far as the height of the corn itself. Of course, if you take that all the way through, we'll see an effect on yield as well. But we see an issue definitely with the central fill planters as it's coming through there. But one thing I think we need to consider is, if I don't have to go quite this deep to be able to shatter, if I can still shatter and go a couple inches shallower, then we've seen where this isn't quite as loose here. It'll give us something a little bit more firm to plant onto.
Thank you, Missy.
Up next, using tillage to reduce disease pressure. We'll wrap things up when Corn College TV returns.
Get harder working leaves and higher performing crops from your foliar application with Ratchet, with LCO promoter technology for corn and soybeans.
You don't just see a farm. You see a common bond. That's what we're working to protect. Enlist is a new herbicide-tolerant trait system that will build on glyphosate, improving performance to move farming ahead.
The global market. It takes some forward thinking. At Bauer Trading, we're trading the future today. Watching the four corners of the earth for market activity, Bauer Trading compiles and analyzes information, develops strategies, precisely times implementation, and continually monitors global events. Jim Bauer's vast experience in this process is why investors, large and small, trust him. Call Bauer Trading at 1-800-533-8045. Bauer Trading, global experience at work for you.
Some people tend to dream small. Others dream big. But with agriculture's ability to feed the 1 billion hungry people on the planet and a projected global population of 9 billion by the year 2050, it's time to dream huge. Farmers Feeding the World is about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. Learn more. Give generously. Please dream huge with us.
The potential for great profits and big losses comes at a time of unprecedented market volatility. If you need help managing risk on your farm, turn to a source you can trust. Turn to Bob Utterback. In the business since 1981, Bob works with producers, feed buyers, and speculators all across the country, and he and his staff want to work with you. Call Utterback Marketing Services today to learn how you can build a plan to achieve your marketing objectives for 2011 and beyond.
Finally today, rounding out our tillage discussions, I caught up with Ken Ferry to talk with him about tillage and tillage systems and how that may affect our disease pressure later in the growing season. Ken, when we're looking at our tillage system, it's pretty incredible how what we're doing underground can have an impact on disease later in the season.
Yeah, it is. In this particular plot, we've got the same hybrid all the way across in this plot, but we got different tillage strips going the other way. And we're looking here at the lower three leaves of the plant, and I'm looking at the amount of disease pressure that is here in the field itself on the plants. And this is where I've moldboard plowed, and these lower three leaves have very few disease lesions. In this case, we're looking at gray leaf. You're holding where I no-tilled into it. So this is no-till corn on corn, and you can see the aggressive amount of gray lesions on these lower leaves. The disease from this plant is coming from the residue. How we manage the residue affects how the disease pressure is going to go up and down. Doesn't mean we have to bury all the residue, but we are going to have to be proactive in managing this disease, either through hybrid selection or being ready to manage it with a fungicide.
Okay, and what about the way that we rotate crops? Is that going to play into how we manage this disease?
It's going to play a big part into it. Some diseases, like anthracnose, can go from corn to soybeans and other crops, and you can't do anything about it. But when we're talking about certain corn diseases, such as gray leaf or eye spot or something like that, northern leaf blight, they're all going to come from last year's residue.
Okay.
So the more residue you got, the higher the risk. Corn on corn carries a high risk, but even a no-till corn bean rotation, where you're carrying corn over from 2 years ago, carries some risk as far as the spores got to be there, and then the conditions got to be right for the disease to take off.
All right, so the takeaway from this is, depending on what you do underground, can really play into what kind of diseases you have to deal with next year.
Correct, and if a guy changes his system, so if he was in a moldboard plowed type system or a corn bean system, and he switches to a no-till corn on corn or strip-till corn on corn, and he hasn't managed disease before, he's now going to have to start managing that disease.
All right. As always, thanks for watching, and remember, you can always find these shows or pieces of these shows online at farmjournalcorncollege.com. Here's what's coming up next week on the show.
Coming up next week on Corn College TV, the impact micronutrients can have on plant growth, plus breaking down pollination, the good, the bad, the ugly at this essential stage in production, and making sure nitrogen carries through the season for maximum yields. All that and how tillage impacts planter performance next week on Corn College TV.
We'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Class dismissed.